This is the Sharing Without Shame podcast, where we go beyond addiction to uncover the deeper roots of trauma and shame. Hurt people hurt people. They hide behind masks. And here, we're done hiding. We're sharing our stories without shame.
Welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast. I'm your host, Donna Marsden. I'm a certified recovery support worker, family recovery facilitator, and a mother who's impacted by my son's my son's addiction. He's now 17 years in recovery. This podcast is a safe space for parents and anyone affected by the ripple effects of addiction. You'll hear real talk, practical tools, and proven strategies to help you gain clarity, build resilience, and take control of your life. Grab a free copy of my 5 boundaries and breakthroughs in the show notes and reach out when you're ready to create lasting change. So today I'd like to welcome Karrie Mitten. She is the CEO and founder of Uplevel Your Life Consulting, LLC, a certified and award-winning transformational life mastery consultant, speaker, and empowerment coach. She helps people break free from default patterns and the need for outside approval, guiding them to discover their soul's purpose and design a life they truly love with heart-centered coaching. Karrie supports clients through programs rooted in love, compassion, and lived experience. She's a contributing author and 2 international bestsellers, Sacred Dance and Wisdom from Leaders Leading to a Soul-Led Life, and Short, Sweet, and Sacred, Volume 2. She has been featured on numerous podcasts and online events, including her own summit, Solutions for Success. Karrie lives with her husband for 35 years. Congratulations. And their 2 furry office assistants, Gracie and Murphy. She enjoys family time and peaceful getaways at her Michigan vacation home. And most importantly, she practices what she teaches. Welcome, Karrie.
Thank you, Donna. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm glad to have you on. So, first question, what would you like to share without shame?
Yeah, that's a really great question when you asked me that originally, and I thought, wow, that's a very loaded question. There's a lot of things that, I could answer, but I think what would probably serve your clients best is just, the journey that I was on myself during my son's high school and college career. We can talk a lot about my son and his journey, but really it was about my journey, right? And what I learned about myself and my own addictive personality, right? My own obsessive compulsive, helicopter mom, having to get everything right, having to get everything perfect. Here to say that I'm sharing, that I am absolutely a recovering obsessive compulsive mom who wanted to control my son into being the perfect child, right? So, through that, I learned so many things about myself, about, other people, about other people's journey is not mine. I'm here to say that I'm a recovering div personality to making sure that everything on the outside looked perfect.
Right?
Right. But on the inside, there were lots of things going on. So,
Yeah, the gift of imperfection.
yeah.
As long as we look
Yes.
good on the outside, you don't know what's going on in here.
Yeah, and that really came from I remember as a kid, I mean, I grew up in a addictive family household. My mom and dad were both alcoholics. My mom was actually a drug addict. But we would go to church every Sunday and we would all be completely dressed to the nines, as my as my grandma would say, and everybody looked great. We had, myself and my 2 brothers had matching outfits on, and we were taught to how to behave in church. And then Sunday night we'd go home and the bottle would open and my parents would celebrate Sunday evening, and all hell would break loose, pardon my
Mm,
phrase. But and so I kind of grew up in that environment, right? And then I did. And I noticed that, I was the enabler. I allowed, I mean, as a child, certainly you're kind of a victim. I don't want to say victim of circumstances, but you are a part of your circumstances.
you're
And
impacted by it. You're impacted
affected.
by it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so when I had my own family, even though I didn't have the addiction to alcohol or drugs, I had an addiction to perfection, right? I thought that I had to show everybody that no matter what was going on inside or behind closed doors, that on the outside we all dressed the part, we looked the part, we talked the part, but we weren't the part.
Right?
Right. And so,
Yeah.
so my son was definitely, he was again, I don't want to use the word victim, but he was affected by that mentality that I had.
Sure.
And so, so yeah, I mean, I think that 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 lifestyle that I was raised in, until I believe that I was put here on this earth to break that generational cycle, right? Of addiction, no matter what the addiction looks like. And
Hmm.
so we are, I like to say we are brilliant and imperfect all at the same time.
Right? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I know. So because of the way you were brought up,
Mhm.
what you grew up with, the type of parenting and the environment, did that affect, or is that why you started your consulting business? How did, we all land where we are because of
Mhm.
something typically that happened that
Yeah. Yeah.
catapults us to want to make a difference or
Yeah.
help people or whatever. So, dealing with your son, or were you doing this before you knew of your son's addiction?
No, this all happened after. And yes, absolutely. I mean, I believe that everything that happens in our life leads us to where we are. And we can either decide to lean into our purpose or we can decide to not lean into our purpose. And I believe that what brought me to where I am today is a culmination of my upbringing, where I was my low sense of self-worth, my addictive personality. And then, I was in corporate America for 25 years. I was again, very successful on the outside, right? But on the inside, I was dying. It wasn't what it wasn't my passion. It wasn't what I was really was called to do. And finally, after being in corporate America for 25 years, and I bought into a company and that I thought was going to be my saving grace. I was going to help save the world by putting people to work. And so I found that it was not what I wanted to do. It was not my soul's calling. And I walked away from it. This was at the time where my son was in his addiction. My daughter was struggling in college. My marriage was on the rocks. I was actually drinking a bottle of wine a night because I
Mhm.
didn't know how to cope with what was going on around me. I knew that I was being called into something more, but gosh, I was doing everything that I was told to do, but yet I wasn't happy, right? And
Mhm.
so when I walked away from corporate America, it was probably one of the lowest parts of my life, with all the things swirling around. So I walked away, decided to get my own support with a life coach. I had done therapy before. Therapy wasn't really my bag. Not bashing it. But it just
Oh,
it
I
wasn't
get it.
it didn't support me in what I needed at the time. Life coaching was just a new perspective on how to build up a life, right? And while I was in the program, really leaning into what I would really love to do with my life. I mean, I was 50 years old, looking at the last quarter of the game here, right? And I didn't want to do what I didn't love to do anymore, and so I really leaned into that, and life coaching became my passion. Um, and I believe that, we attract who we are, right? And so I've attracted a lot of women in my life um, that have the perfectionism addiction, right? That have some type of calling for more, but can't see the forest through the trees, don't really know how to support themselves in, living the life that they love. So yes, I mean, all the things in my life that happened, I'm a firm believer that we walk through things to get to the other side to support others in doing the same, right? And we can either take experiences as something that's going to shake us or something that's going to shape us, right? We can either get
Hmm.
bitter or we can get better. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
that's
And you
what I
can,
have used my whole, all the stories, all the things, all the history as part of my, curriculum now. The
mm,
content of my mentor says the content of my life is the curriculum of my evolution, right?
I love that.
Yeah, that I get to look on that content. It's just content, right? And I get to use that as curriculum to grow
Hmm.
myself. Content of my life is the curriculum of my evolution. And I really believe that, and I preach that to my clients that, whatever they're going through, and I just had a conversation with a client this morning. She's going through a pretty rough patch with her son-in-law, her stepson. I told her, you can either decide right now that there's a learning opportunity in this challenge, right? And when you do that and you stay open and curious to, yes, this sucks, but I know that there's a seed of good in here somewhere. There's a lesson in here somewhere. If you just stay open to that, you'll get it, right? And you'll get through the challenge much quicker than if you just sit and stir in it. And even in the Bible, it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, right? The key terminology there is walk through. Like we don't
Mm,
pitch a tent, we don't plant a flag, we don't stay stuck. We just stay open to, okay, there's something better here. There's a seed of good, there's an opportunity for learning, there's something that's going to grow me here, right? And it can be a challenge when you're in it to really look at all that and be open and curious. Okay, here we go. Here's the challenge. I'm going to learn through it. Our humanness doesn't want to do that, right? Our
well, and it
humanness
takes
wants to
us
stay stuck.
time. It takes us time to get to that point of acceptance because many of us, when we're going through those times, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's very dark and we're
Hmm.
stuck.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
the walls are this close.
Yeah, yeah,
Go.
yeah.
And we're just so caught up in our pain that we can't put one foot in front of the other until we hit our enough.
Right, exactly. And
Mm,
that's why it's important to have a coach like you, Donna, to support you in going through, that it's because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You are on the other side of it, right? And you can support people in continuing just to stay on the tracks, right? To stay on the path.
yeah, that's what we both do.
Yeah.
We work with primarily, I work with mostly moms.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll have a dad or a partner, but
Hmm.
mostly it's moms that are
Hmm.
just so desperate.
Hmm.
And, I
Hmm.
think women where we can be more open and
Yeah.
more vulnerable than men sometimes. And
Uh-huh.
when we get to a point when it comes to our family, we're willing to open up to ask for help, try to break free from some of the patterns that we've either ingrained in us as kids or developed through our fears or trying to control. And
Mhm.
so how do you, when you're working with your clients, how do you help them get through different, from the negative patterns to something more positive?
Hmm. Hmm. That's again, it's a whole process, right? But
Yeah.
the one thing that and I'll share this with you. When my son was going through his addiction, um, he got into a point where he spiraled into major depression, ended up having grand mal seizures because of the depression, and his life was just in a spiral. And there was a point when I called a mentor of mine and I said to her, I don't know what to do for this child. I really, I, I've, I have no path right here, right now. I need some support. And she said, and this is what I do with my clients. She said, you get to create a vision for what you would love his life to look like. Because right now he can't do that. He's in the thick of addiction. He can't see the next day, much less the next minute.
Yeah.
And she said, so you get to stand in the gap for him. And so what I do with my clients is I help them to create a vision of their life, what they would love their life to look like. What would you
Hmm.
love, to be doing with your time? What would you love to, how would you love to share your gifts and talents with the world? So I did that for my son. I created a vision of him living a productive life, having a job that he loves, that, could support him in, potentially and eventually having a family and finding the love of his life and all of these things. And I held that vision. And this is what I tell my clients. You hold that vision, repeat it over and over and over again. Then you act as if you are the woman or the man in the vision. So because my son couldn't do that at the time, I held the vision for him. And every time he would say something like, he would come back with, things that were sometimes brutal, brutal to, I would remind myself of the vision that this is not who he is, not his behavior. He is a spiritual being having this human experience, and he has far more power and contains far more power than his circumstances, situations, or conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I would just hold that vision. And I created boundaries, right? So I this is another thing that I share with my clients. You got to create boundaries in your life, because if you're feeling the overwhelm or the anxiety or the stress of life, it's because people or other things or other people are over running over your boundaries, right? Because if you don't know what the boundaries are, they get run over. So we create boundaries, right? So I created boundaries for my son, and I told him, "You are not going to speak that way to me. You are not going to, I'm not allowing this in our house." And
Mm-hmm.
I got to really stand and ask the question, what would love do here? Right?
Mm.
What would love do here? And eventually, Donna, love kicked him out of the house, right? I had to really, put on my big girl pants and say to him, "You are not welcome here. Because you're continuing to do this, you are not welcome here." And I have to tell you, it was the best thing I could have done for him, right?
Wow.
Because he then had no choice but to figure things out,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
honestly didn't know if I was going to see him the next day, but I had to trust that love was speaking. So this is what I do with my clients, right? I teach them to create a vision for themselves, create the boundaries around that vision, right? Ask their higher power, what action step can you take in service of that vision, right? Which is what I did with my son. And I can tell you to this day, very blessed that he is living his best life. He's married. They're expecting our grandbaby within the next few weeks. Productive member of society. They are buying a home. I mean, the whole thing. But if you had told me during that time, I mean, I even said to my mentor when she told me to do this, I said, "I just don't believe that this can happen." And she said to me, "Then believe in my belief."
Ooh.
And that's what I tell my clients, right? When they have a vision that is so far beyond their reach, they think, that I see the power inside of them. I mean, I saw the power inside of my son. I see the power inside of every person.
Yeah.
Anything that you put your mind to, you can raise it up, right?
It's interesting when you bring this up, and because when my son was in active addiction, I used to think about or pray about what I didn't want, and I kept getting more of
Yeah.
it.
Yes, yes. Exactly.
Right? Because
Exactly.
the
Yep.
universe doesn't understand the word don't.
That's right. That's right.
So I had to change how I prayed and,
Yep.
holding space for him. And,
Yep.
and I would pray, I want my son to live a healthy, happy life.
That's right.
Today he
Yes.
does, with three little boys and a
Yeah.
wife and a beautiful home and a business, and,
Hmm.
highly successful, and 17 years in recovery.
Yeah.
But I changed my
Y-
approach.
Yes. I
That's
mean,
huge.
absolutely, because what we focus on expands, right? So if if focusing on, I don't want to lose weight, or I don't want to be heavy, or I don't want to, then guess what? That's exactly what we're going to bring forth, right? Is what we're focusing on. And
Right.
so I used to do that all the time, when my son was in his addiction, I would say, and I would say things like, "Why is this happening to me? Why can't we just live a normal life?" right? Why can't we just, be the perfect family, right? And this was before I learned all of these things, that, looking back, and this is, I would never want anyone to have to go through what I went through or what we went through, but I want everyone to gain what we gained from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
My son understands now, that he's in control of his life, that he's responsible for his results. Nobody else is, right? I learned so many different things, but one thing that I am so grateful for, and this sounds awkward even to say it, but grateful that I became and found myself through his addiction,
Right?
right? Yeah. And that was, certainly something that I would never wish on anyone to have to go through that. But the results from it are, I mean, so grateful,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't change anything that I went through in the last, what, 20 something years to be who I am today.
Hmm.
Because I like this version of me much better than
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
old version of me who was the victim,
Yes. That's,
always the victim,
yep. Yep.
right?
Me too. Yep.
And so now when you see yourself going there, you're aware. There's an
Hmm.
awareness, and you just don't do it and manifest in a different way. And thoughts are very different. And there's just the tools and all these different things that we can do to keep
Yeah. I
ourselves in
mean,
a very healthy space.
and I think that a lot of times that we make things hard, I mean, my whole life, I felt like I was always struggling. I was always I can remember saying, I'm on the struggle bus today, and it's like, okay, well, but I'm choosing my life, right? I'm choosing everything that I do. So if I'm choosing hard, it's up to me, right? And so, really, I mean, this universe, this life, you know, is structured for our success, right? But the choices that we make determine if it's going to be easy or if it's going to be hard. And
Right.
I just tell myself now, I choose easy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't argue with anyone. I see the power in everyone. I know, that everyone has the same 525,600 minutes, and life is easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just that we sometimes choose hard. A lot of us do. And we learn through that, right?
Right. And when we simplify our lives, and unfortunately, I think some of that comes with age.
Mhm.
You just get to a point where we're sick of being sick of being,
Yep. Yep.
and
Yep.
all that stuff. And it's like, ugh. And you
Mhm.
don't have, for me anyway, it was like, I don't want to be that girl. I
Yeah.
don't, that doesn't feel good. I want to feel good internally, emotionally, physically, and mentally.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's at peace within. And I think that's when we are open enough to see ourselves, not being the victim, see our flaws, accept what they are, but work on that inner child or whatever it is that's keeping us stuck or keeping us in a negative mindset.
Hmm.
We have to do the work
Yes.
in order to move forward. And
Yeah.
it's not pretty sometimes.
Right.
And it took
Right.
me years. I've been doing this work for 19 years, and I'm still a work in progress.
Yes,
And we
absolutely.
have reoccurrences just like our kids when they have a reoccurrence, or people like to call it a relapse. It happens to us as well. We're
Yeah,
not perfect all the time.
that's right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I tell my clients all the time, I don't just talk the talk. I walk the walk. Like
Yeah.
I'm a human. I'm not a robot. I'm not perfect. I'm learning every single day. That's why my podcast is the journey of becoming, right? Because we're all on this journey of becoming. Every day we're becoming. We get to,
Mm-hmm.
it's how the choices that we make, the decisions that change, everything starts with a decision.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Right. And so, yeah, we do. I myself, I speak personally. I absolutely have relapses, right? But I'm more aware of now when that happens, right?
Yeah.
And I have my own coaches, you know. I don't I'm a coach who's coached. I believe good coaches are coached. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, to stay in the study, to stay in the structure of support, to stay in the accountability, right? That I know that there's always more for me and that I'm right along there with my clients, you know. So,
Yeah. And always open and willing to learn.
hmm
You know, one of the things we taught our kids when they were little was green grows and ripe rots. As long as you're willing to learn, you're green. But as soon as
hmm
you think you know it all, you just shrivel up. And
Yeah.
so I think it's really important to be open to all kinds of different things that you never thought that you might enjoy
hmm
or participate in, or I mean, I never saw myself doing this work.
Right. Right.
And I don't know if you did, but and here we are paying it forward.
Yes.
And
Yes.
but it has a passion and a love,
hmm
and just I don't want ever to see anybody hurt like I was, go through that
Yeah.
pain and be in that fetal position. And if I can help one parent not go there or be financially depleted or emotionally depleted like I was, then I've done my job.
hmm Absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree 100%. I mean, and again, you know, I believe that we're set here on this earth to go through some of the things to become the light at the end of the tunnel, right? The light workers, as they are called, right? That we we've risen from the ashes of, you know, of the challenges that we've had in our life in order to support and be on our mission in our mission field. I mean, and I never, you asked, I never in a bazillion years would have guessed that I would be a life coach. Right. Because
Mhm.
I remember thinking, I'm such a mess. You know, like, why would anybody talk to me? I mean, I can remember thinking, like, you know, and I would have girlfriends who would call me and they'd ask for advice or whatever. And I'd get off the phone and I'd be like, I don't even know why she called me. I'm my own, you know, worst enemy. I'm a mess. You know, all these things. But, you know, all of that was just a precursor. Everything that I went through, again, was just part of the journey of my becoming and becoming a life coach. I absolutely know that this is the work that I was sent to do.
And it happened organically, correct?
Mhm. It did.
Right.
It
The
did.
same,
Yeah.
like there wasn't a plan,
Nope.
and
Nope.
we just followed what was put in front of us,
Yeah.
and developed a program. And yours is Uplevel Your Consulting LLC. That's
hmm
your business.
Uplevel your
And
life. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and it's amazing that when we stop, we pause and we listen
Mm-hmm.
and then move forward.
hmm
And listening can just be, just zenning out. It doesn't mean you have to meditate and, do all the stuff. It's sometimes it's like, when you're spaced out, that's
hmm
a form of meditation.
Yeah.
And if you're silent, you'll hear the
Yes.
messages. It will
And
show up.
there's eternal broadcast of our spirit, always, always, and even in our addiction, there's a eternal broadcast. But typically, what happens is we put that voice on a shelf, right? Oh no, that's not for me, or that's not the right timing, or that's not whatever, whatever, right? And but if we just truthful with ourselves, you know, there we hear the voice, we hear what we are intended to do, or we
Mhm.
hear the steps to take. We hear that little voice telling us, right? But our humanness says, "Oh no, that doesn't feel logical, or that doesn't feel right. I'm not that person, whatever, right?" And I do think some of it does, like you said earlier, comes with age. We tend to kind of not give, can I say the word, a shit about what other people say, right? I mean, we just, it's like, okay, I'm 59 years old. I'm not going to listen to what, other people's opinion anymore, right? Or, I'm just going to do what I've been directed to do. And that goes back to, choosing hard or choosing easy, right? If you listen to that voice and you're truthful about it, and you really you pay attention to it and you grow a relationship with that internal voice. If you take those steps, that's choosing easy.
And it's being honest with ourselves. It's just like, when our kids are in active addiction and if I used to teach a class on recovery, and it's a 10 plus year process,
Hmm.
but it takes year 3 for our loved ones to get honest with themselves, and therefore they can be honest with everybody else.
Yeah.
Same applies to us.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
we're honest with ourselves about our pain or whatever that's going on, and we can work through it and figure it out and heal it, and then we can share that and be
Hmm.
vulnerable with the people that we work with, so that they hopefully can get the gifts that we've received.
Hmm.
You pay it forward and you pass
Hmm.
it on and you pass it on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe with all my heart that you and I were put on this earth to break whatever the generational curses have been up until now, right? That we are here to do that. And if when we do, when we step, I have a quote, when we step into our greatness, generations are changed, right? Like we change the legacy of our family, of our friends, of our, generation.
I have like 20 years on you. I'm in my 70s. And so my grandparents was, you don't make waves. You,
Yes, right,
and
right.
now I'm a baby boomer, and it was children should be seen but not heard.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
gets a little bit better as the generations go on.
Yeah.
Part is to stuff whatever's going on, any of
Yeah.
your pain. Oh, you're too sensitive. And I find a lot of people with addictive personalities or addiction that are using something to cover, to mask the pain,
Yeah.
whether it's shopping, drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's that pain that they're masking, and it's not about the addiction, it's about the why.
Uh-huh.
And how do you heal that? And
Right.
and I think a lot of people don't understand healing
Mm-hmm.
really means, and
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's healing can be different for so many different people in
Mm-hmm.
different ways.
Yeah. 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 I believe, and I teach this to my clients as well. I believe that we have four bodies. We have the spiritual body, the mental body, the emotional body, and the physical body, right? And if we don't take care of the spiritual body,
Mm.
meaning if our spirit is if we're told as a child that children are to be seen and not heard, that is cutting off our spirit, right?
And that's why my throat chakra was closed for so many
Yes,
years.
right. Exactly. Exactly. Right. So, but what that does is it trickles down, right? So we're now thinking, okay, I can't talk because I'm not worthy enough to talk. And then it creates the unworthy feeling, right? And then it can create physical dis-ease in our body. And it could look like addiction, right?
Yep.
And so if you don't treat the root cause, and I love Louise Hay's book and Heal Your Life, right? Because she talks about this, but if you don't treat the root cause of what's going on, it will trickle down and it will manifest as dis-ease. And that's what our traditional, medical world treats is the topical, the physical, right? But really, in reality, what we get to treat is the spiritual.
Yeah, it's all emotional.
Yeah,
So many people are on medications that they don't need to be on because they just can't go within
that's
and
right. Yeah,
be raw with themselves. They don't
yeah,
have to show it to the world. Just
right, right.
open and honest with yourself, because it's the greatest gift we can give ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. To come
But
back
it
to it.
hurts like hell too.
It can, it can, but I just say rip the Band-Aid off, right? Rip it off because once you do, I mean, life becomes so much more. I love the saying, amplified aliveness.
Mm,
Right? When you just come home to yourself and you become you reveal your true authentic self. You live a life of amplified aliveness. It's
mm.
just such a freeing, liberating feeling. And but again, it's treating that root cause. It's getting to the bottom of what's really going on spiritually.
So as we're getting close to wrapping things up, how do people get in touch with you? You listen to your podcast, your website?
Yeah, so the podcast will be launching in a couple of weeks called The Journey of Becoming. I have a website also, which is uplevelyourlifeconsulting.com. And there's lots of free things on there. And also, they can book a clarity call. No obligation to work with me, just to get some clarity around your vision. But yeah, lots of different ways. So, would love to support anyone who would love to have a chat.
And to end with some words of wisdom for the
Mm,
listeners.
yeah. So, I love the quote by Mark Twain where he says, the two most important dates in your life are the date that you were born and the date that you know that you find out why.
Ooh.
And I really believe that that's true, because it doesn't matter how old you are or, where you are in life. Once you find out why you're here, that is the most important day of your life.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Great chat.
Yeah, Donna, thank you for having me. It was awesome.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for joining Donna for today's conversation. Remember, trauma may wear many faces, but healing is about uncovering the truth beneath the pain and learning to live without shame. If today's episode resonated with you, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. It helps this message reach more hearts that need it. If you have a story of navigating trauma, shame, or addiction and how you found your freedom, Donna would love to hear from you. This podcast is built on real stories, and yours could inspire someone else's healing. Visit sharingwithoutshame.com to connect with Donna, apply to be a guest, or learn how to bring her books, coaching, and speaking engagements to your community or organization. Until next time, remember, healing begins the moment you choose to stop hiding and start sharing without shame.